All right, I want to speak to U.S. Congress right now. As I speak, early Wednesday, December 21, 2021, there is a joint session of Congress, and it is listening to President Zelensky of the Ukraine. I want to point out that Nancy Pelosi was asked yesterday, she's the outgoing Speaker of the House, she was asked yesterday about the prospect of the Republicans not supporting the war in Ukraine. This is what she had to say about this narrow topic.
Have an complete total hero in the Congress of the United States, fighting for democracy, leading people who are fighting for democracy, would bring honor to the Congress of the United States. I saw him there in Kyiv. It was overwhelming to see the courage of the people of Ukraine, their commitment to democracy, and in fighting Putin's assault on democracy, they are fighting for democracy for all of us.
What message would you share with us, with Zelensky, regarding the House Republican majority that might be less supportive of
I don't know if that's the case. I feel very strong about the bipartisan support. That may not mean unanimous, but it does mean strong. Yeah.
Right, so it's bipartisan, it's not unanimous, but it's strong. Let me interpret that. The paid-off politicians, there is no difference between the two political parties, really, especially whenever you get to the leadership. They majority support the war in Ukraine. I support Ukraine's notion that they can exist as a state. They have territorial sovereignty. They're being invaded by an aggressor. I get that. They're not a treaty nation. No one has ever asked permission to send them money. And I would like to see in the United States Constitution where the federal government is allowed just to give billions of dollars that don't matter from the Federal Reserve in foreign aid to countries that we're not aligned with, especially whenever we have more pressing needs here, infrastructure, the border, healthcare, other things. But Pelosi's point, she's just gushing over the democracy of Ukraine, the democracy and Zelensky's leadership. I don't know what the deal is. People would say that she's benefiting from it. I think that that's probably pretty obvious. I don't know how, but she's benefiting from it. But for her to say that there's bipartisan support for money to Ukraine, that is not a politically popular position in America. I don't think the majority of Americans want to send money to Ukraine. So why would a valid electorate representatives majority support money to Ukraine if the majority of people don't support the money to Ukraine, irrespective of its constitutionality? Then you get to Senator the Turtle McConnell, and this is what he had to say about the number one priority in America. Watch this.
Making sure the Defense Department can deal with the major threats coming from Russia and China, providing assistance for the Ukrainians to defeat the Russians. That's the number one priority for the United States right now, according to most Republicans. That's sort of how we see the challenges confronting the country at the moment.
False. That's not how we see it. We see the border. We see the sexualization of kids. We see the fact that elections aren't open, honest, fair, or verifiable. That's what we see. We don't like the predation of federal agencies that don't have charters and aren't justified in the Constitution to target American citizens, just because there's a whimsical notion that they're an insurrectionist or they disagree with you politically. Most Americans don't live their lives, man, I really hope that Ukraine survives another day. I really hope that President Zelensky, that got the Oscar from Sean Penn, is able to just survive the fact that, Russia is not actually invading further. They're actually staying back where they're at, to annex the majority ethnic Russian places that they're going on. Right? Like, this is not the concern. Regardless of your position on the war in Ukraine, it's not the majority position in the United States. And it's not the majority position of the Republican Party. It is the majority of position of paid-off politicians, which, whenever you consider the fact that there's an election trial going on in Maricopa County, the first of many that have been tried to go on through the entire country, we've got such a constitutional crisis that the people who are in power, they know, they just don't care. They really don't care what the American people want. And that's because they're not beholden to the American people. This should be the clear takeaway. McConnell and Pelosi on the same page. There's no daylight. And even though there's those Republicans, I had one person say, stop with the boomer joke. So I'm not going to do a boomer joke. But there are Americans that still believe that there is a right and that there is a left. And these people that still believe in the right and the left being at war with each other can't understand the fact that a Speaker Pelosi losing the gavel is not a big thing, because whoever takes the gavel, probably McCarthy, is just as bad as Pelosi is. He's just going to say more right-sounding things than the radical left. And this is the reductive. I believe this is the consequence of decades of bombarding people's brains, either through public schools or bought-off media, psyoped social media accounts, like was demonstrated yesterday with the Department of Defense into Twitter. And if it's happening in Twitter, why don't you think it's happening in Facebook, YouTube, other places? And if this is the case, there are people that are like, man, the radical left isn't in charge of the House anymore. We sure are good and glad that the Republican Party's in charge. We just need Mitch McConnell to get out of office. It was like Lucy with the football is kicking the can down the street. You think you're going to be set up for representation? You think you're going to be set up for the Constitution to be defended, to conserve the American way of life? You really think the sovereignty of the United States or the respect of image bearers of God in America is the priority for these people? They just told you the political priority is the defense of Ukraine. That's the number one priority. How about the fact that Title 42, which is a fig leaf policy instated from a false pandemic, is stopping the hordes of Mongolia coming from across the border, and it was only upheld by a Supreme Court justice who called healthcare a tax, by the way. But this Supreme Court holding in place Title 42 is the one thing holding the hordes of Mongolia coming from across the southern border, when in reality, millions of people have already crossed the border just this year. We're butchering babies. There's the destruction of marriage, the fraying of the family. Schools are centralizing and boldly brandishing books that are destructive to God's order and perverting the innocence of minds. And the number one issue of the Republican Party is to help Ukraine fight Russia. But yet there are still people that are like the radical left and the conservative right. Well, I'm far right. There's no such thing as far right, folks. There's no such thing as far right. There's no such thing as far right. There's no such thing as far left. There is either Christ or not Christ. You either believe the gospel or you don't believe the gospel. If you let the Bible tell you what to think, you won't give way to fiat currency. That doesn't mean you don't participate in it. But fiat currency isn't from the mind of someone who loves Jesus. Open borders is not from the mind of someone who loves Jesus. Destroying God's model for marriage is not from the mind of someone who loves Jesus. Prioritizing a foreign war that has nothing to do with the territorial sovereignty or the defense of the rights of the people in the country is not from the mind of someone who loves Jesus. The magistrate swings the sword, does not carry the sword in vain to punish evil. It's here, locally here. Like, take care of America first. If you're from America, take care of America first. It's not Ukraine first. It ain't Israel first. It's not Russia first. It ain't Africa first. It's America first. That's because God put you here. And if you came here illegally, God did not put you here. You put yourself here illegally. Get out. But people don't think like this. They'll still think the radical left, Nancy Pelosi's a radical leftist. Please. People need to look at Jesus. Get rid of all this right-left crap. Jesus is the only one you're looking at. And whenever you look on him, just like Peter, you can walk on water despite the storm. You look away from him, you're going to get bogged down in this crap because this stuff is not important like Jesus is. Hey, thanks for watching. Wanted to ask you to go ahead and go to Humble Whole Bean Coffee, humblecoffee.store, humblecoffee.store. It's premium air roasted coffee. It's the best coffee you're ever going to get. If you're a coffee drinker, support a Christian business that's going to advance the gospel of Jesus Christ. 99% of coffee companies put the bean on a hot metal surface. They burn it. It's bitter. They gotta load it up with all sorts of fake stuff. We don't do that. Air roasted coffee, the way that God intended. It's delicious. It's great. You're never gonna drink a better coffee. Go to humblecoffee.store and get yours today. humblecoffee.store.